Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this recording of an alumni panel. My name is Mary Van Verst. I use she, her pronouns. I'm on the staff of Serve Washington, which annually hosts the AmeriCorps Swearing-In Ceremony for the state of Washington. This year, in 2020, as we prepare for an all-virtual swearing-in ceremony and related events on October 30th, I've had the privilege of working with a small group of dedicated AmeriCorps members who served on an advisory committee. Two members of that advisory committee took the lead in organizing this panel. They are Chelsea Mancilla and Isabella Kent. As we start the panel, I want to thank Chelsea and Isabella and the panelists that they have worked with for this session, all of whom you will meet next. We hope that you will find this panel to be informative and inspiring for your service here in 2020-2021. Thank you.
Welcome to the Alumni Panel of October 2020. My name is Chelsea Mancilla. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently serving at the South Sound Reading Foundation. I am speaking from Lacey, Washington. I will be acting as the moderator for this pre-recorded AmeriCorps Alumni Panel. I am truly honored to be present with our panelists who will share their past experiences and share how COVID-19 has impacted their service year. At this time, I will let the panelists introduce themselves. Isabella?
Hi, my name is Isabella Kent. I use she, her pronouns, and during my service year, I served at Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Services of Whatcom County in Bellingham, Washington as an AmeriCorps Vista. I finished my service in August of 2020 and just started a job as a domestic violence advocate in Seattle, Washington.
Thank you, Isabella. And next we have Jalen.
Hello, I am Jalen Robinson Mcclure. My pronouns are he, him, his. My past service year and current service year this year is at Baker Middle School in the Tacoma Public School District as a college and career coach for the College Success Foundation and AmeriCorps. Currently still living in Tacoma, Washington, and enjoying the service year that I have coming up.
Thank you, Jalen. Next, Matt, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt McDonald. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am also a college and career coach. However, I am in Yakima County, Washington, serving at Washington Middle School in my second service year as a college and career coach. While I work in Yakima, I still live in Ellensburg, so that's where I'm currently reading from.
Thank you, Matt. Next, Madeleine.
Hi, I'm Maddie, or Madeleine. I go by she, her pronouns. Originally, I started my service with the Whatcom County Health Department here in Bellingham, but with COVID happening, I transitioned to working with the Opportunity Council. And I'm finishing up, I'm in my last 2 months of service.
Great, thank you, panelists. For our first question, we have, what recommendations do you have for current members to make the most of their service year in 2020? Isabella, you may begin.
Everyone knows that when you serve in AmeriCorps, there is an expectation that you serve your community and kind of give your whole heart to the community. But I think it'd be most helpful to explain to the people watching this panel what services are also available to them while they're serving their communities. My biggest piece of advice and the biggest benefit that I got out of service was being able to rely on public benefits. And I encourage all AmeriCorps members to rely on public benefits that are available to them. Using food stamps and Medicaid really helped me financially during AmeriCorps and has also assisted me in my new job because I'm helping clients access those services and those resources, and being able to pull from my own personal experience and inform how I'm able to support other people in navigating these systems has been a really amazing way for me to kind of come full circle with my own personal experience, my service, and now moving into my career. I would also really encourage all AmeriCorps members to participate in any trainings or community events, regardless of what they look like during COVID, because they're great opportunities for networking, meeting peers, and building your resume. It might be challenging during COVID, but even something as simple as reaching out to a community partner to share what you're passionate about or goals that you have, just to potentially find a mentor or build more community connections to build up your resource network.
Great, thank you, Isabella. I really enjoyed hearing about your full circle experience as you look into the workforce. Now, Jalen, tell us from your experience. Thank you.
From my experience, a recommendation that I would have for anyone having a service year is to not only serve their community and take care of their community, but to take care of themselves in a personal way. Self-care and mental health is a very, very important time, especially during COVID, where many things are virtual and you have limited interaction with other people. Because of that, and because of how we serve, I believe that taking care of yourself is very, very important. I view our job as us being a pitcher as servers and pouring into other cups. And from time to time, we need to refill our cup. And that is varied by many different ways. Some people do it by listening to music at certain points of the day, doing yoga, working out, or just sleeping. So there's a lot of ways that you can take care of yourself. And by taking care of yourself and serving yourself, you'll be better to serve and take care of the community you're serving in.
Thank you, Jalen. I actually have a specific playlist that says Take Back the Day so that I feel a bit better about my day if I'm having a hard time. Thank you, Jalen. Up next is Matt.
What recommendations do I have for current members to make the most of their service year? Mine is fairly short and sweet. Stay true to your authentic self. This year, especially 2020, has allowed us a lot of time for introspection. You'll find out more about yourself throughout your service year if you remain true to your core values and your true morals. The more you deviate away from your personal self, I feel more that your mission as a AmeriCorps member may be slightly misguided at times. If you stay true to yourself and true to your values, you'll get a more authentic experience out of your service year.
Thank you, Matt. I so agree with you. Stay true to yourself and be authentic. Maddie, please.
Yeah, I think everyone brought up really solid, amazing points that I all would totally agree with and actually had written down myself. I think another thing to bring up too is to really reach out to other AmeriCorps members and Vistas as well. I think that I entered into AmeriCorps in December, which most people usually enter in October or in August. So I wasn't really sure if what I was experiencing was normal or not, with feeling sometimes not adequate enough or just feeling overwhelmed and not doing the self-care, and having fellow Vistas who I could talk to about it who are like, oh no, that's all part of the experience, here's how we can help you take back the day, basically, was a huge help. And also in a lot of different ways, taking advantage of the resources like Isabella had mentioned before, also connected the Vistas and allowed us to support each other on our projects. So definitely reaching out to other Vistas who may be experiencing the same things as you are.
Thank you, Maddie. I so agree that camaraderie is a very important aspect for any service year. Next question is, what skills did you gain from your service? We'll begin again with Isabella.
That is a long list for me, but specifically kind of skills geared towards my career. I ended up serving as a prevention and health education Vista, which meant that I did a lot of curriculum development and program development enhancement to benefit education programs and support groups for children and families. And so I just gained so much experience with hands-on curriculum development, building lesson plans, building presentations, which has already been a huge benefit in my new job. During the switch to COVID, I got to dip my toes a little bit more in direct service. And so I gained a lot stronger facilitation skills when I was able to sort of lead some virtual programs. And then two personal skills that I really felt like I developed and enhanced during my time as an AmeriCorps member were self-advocacy and patience. I never really thought that I was bad at advocating for myself, but there were definitely challenges that presented themselves professionally and personally through AmeriCorps where I was like, I have some growing to do, and this is how I can better support myself if I'm able to communicate my needs to my supervisor, my coworkers, like Maddie said, other AmeriCorps members, and definitely just having patience and trusting the process. Like, you might not feel like you are constantly productive or that you're on task, but like Matt said, if you just stay true to yourself and your values, you will end up with a great outcome.
Great, thank you, Isabella. Next, Jalen, please.
Yes, working in a school setting and an education setting has given me a very, very well skill set and allowed me to develop my current skill set to further my future career, which I envision being in education. So having the opportunity to work with students, deliver lessons, and interact with other educators has been a very, very valuable experience to have, and a very, very valuable experience to gain this past year. Due to COVID, a lot of things had switched around, and again, another valuable skill set in communications. I am a very vocal, easygoing person, have very good with communications. One of the things I realized I struggled with was virtual communications, emails, text messages. Often when I needed something, I would go to someone in person, and I find it very awkward to text or email people. And so it's a skill I've learned to develop and not freak out when I don't get an answer right away. So very, very happy I learned that skill set this past service year.
Thank you, Jalen. Matt, please.
In terms of skills, I would definitely say without a doubt, organization and professional development have been the two biggest components to my skill set. Not only directly related to AmeriCorps, but in a school setting as well. The College Success Foundation allows you an incredible opportunity to work directly in a school site with little to no transitionary period, which is a good thing. I think that in that setting, you get double the practice in the same amount of time. Not only do you have to communicate with your AmeriCorps members and AmeriCorps regional officers and things like that, but you also have to communicate with your school administration and school staff as well, which at times can take on two different forms of verbiage. So I think getting used to those different fields and different styles of communication are helpful, especially if you want to go directly into the field of education, which I know I did. And I also feel that it's good for just giving you an authentic feel for what it's like to work in an educational setting. And that in turn is going to be valuable later on, far beyond your service term, for your future goals and what you want to do with your future careers.
Thank you, Matt. And last but not least, Maddie.
I definitely learned a lot of different skills for sure. It's funny that Jalen talked about the email and emailing stuff, because I used to be so scared when I started my service to send an email. I would like shake before I press send. So professional development has been a huge one for me. I did AmeriCorps right after college, so I'd never really had a job that required working in an office the way my service did. So it was a really great experience learning that. I learned a lot about adaptability with COVID, and I'm sure everyone did. And that's been a huge skill set, I think, for me, is just being able to kind of like change directions and kind of just go with the flow and do the best that you can with what you have. And I think that the big one is patience and trusting the process, which I think is also kind of wrapped in confidence and being more confident in yourself. And that's been a big lesson for me, because sometimes I don't have the most confidence going into a situation, but I think trusting yourself, and again, also going back to what Matt had said, being true to yourself and authentic, really helps you serve other people as well.
Great, thank you, Maddie. Thirdly, how, if at all, did this impact your career goals moving forward? Isabella?
So for me, I actually chose my specific placement as the only AmeriCorps program that I applied to. I know that's not really the norm for a lot of AmeriCorps members, but I had a huge interest in doing prevention and health education within the realm of gender-based violence, and the description for my AmeriCorps position was like very in line with my goals and my resume, and so I was really excited because this felt like an amazing career move either way. And so pre-COVID, I felt like I was really able to get a lot of hands-on experience in a nonprofit setting, working directly in the type of nonprofit that I had hoped to continue to work in and now get to work in, which is really exciting to be on the other side of that. And pre-COVID, I will admit it was a little bit frustrating, just being removed from the physical environment where I was able to shadow and be exposed to other professionals doing this work. And I just felt like I wasn't able to learn about programs as well while working remotely. But I will say that the shift during COVID did allow me to sort of recreate my agenda, recreate my goals, you know, still within the scope of what I was doing in my AmeriCorps service, but it really allowed me to explore passion projects and being able to work with youth in the community, which was incredible. And I'm really thankful that that happened despite kind of the negatives that came out of the reactions to COVID.
Thank you, Isabella. Next, Jalen.
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, I plan on having a career in education. And so getting the opportunity to have hands-on experience with students has been great for my professional development and affirming my passion and ideals for wanting to work in an education setting and getting to work with students. It is a blessing and a pain at times. I work with middle school students, and between the ages 11 and 14, you learn everything in the world and you forget it as soon as you get older. So they know more than I do, as they say, on a consistent basis. So just getting the opportunity to work with that age range as well has helped prepare me for a future career as well. Impact of COVID, definitely disappointing to leave halfway through the year, to not see students go through that full transition of middle school going into high school, and also just leaving certain students behind. Working in a low-income area with many at-risk students, and knowing that they're in a lot of trouble if they're not in school. So there's that small impact with that as well. Personally, with COVID and everything, I took the opportunity to take another service year, grad school in a online way, was just not the thing for me. So fortunately, COVID did allow me to take another service year and made that the best decision for me. So hopefully I can make some ground with the service time that I lost due to COVID and make up for the time I lost to have more of an impact at my same school site.
Thank you, Jalen. Next, Matt.
I would say definitely that COVID has somewhat impacted my career goals. Not necessarily negatively though. My career goals are still fairly up in the air at the moment. I know that for a fact I still want to work in education. I feel like that's where I belong, and that's where I seem to fit in the best. But I'm curious to see what that field is really going to look like in the next 6 months or so. Whether it's online, whether we have hybrid, or whether we take the jump and go all in person back in class. I'm not entirely sure. So it's really hard to tell at the moment exactly where the field of education is kind of focusing on it. It's an interesting time for us all. I think we can agree on that. But I do feel that wherever I go and whatever I decide to do, my experiences with AmeriCorps are going to prepare me greatly for my future endeavors. I feel that not only through the professional development side of things, but also just the fact that you get to really immerse yourself in that educational field, especially through CSF's programs and opportunities. It's been an eye-opening experience, to say the least, to see how quickly life can change. But I can tell that with AmeriCorps and with the experiences I've had with them, just because it seems like the world is changing around you, it doesn't mean that your morals and your values have to change with it. It's good to keep, like I've said before, true to yourself and everything, but I feel as though that's going to give you the best light as to where you want to go with your goals moving forward. So it's difficult to tell exactly where my goals are now, but the field of education and definitely continuing to develop professionally are on the top of them.
Thank you, Matt. Next, Maddie.
Just to double check, is what was the question again? Was it did the service affect your career goals?
Yes, that's right. How, if at all, has this impacted your career goals?
Okay. I think that I did AmeriCorps because I just wasn't totally sure what to do next. And I actually only really applied for this one job because it kind of seemed like it was what I wanted to do. And I think it's really affirmed my goals, which is that I would love to work with food and like lower income communities and making food and healthy food more accessible just for everyone in general. And I think that this service gave me a really great opportunity to do that. The first half of my service would have been way more geared towards that type of work, and the second half is more geared towards working with a food bank. And so it still has to do with food, but in a different capacity, more logistical. But it has definitely made me feel more sure and confident of what avenue I want to stick in. So it's been super helpful.
That's great, Maddie. For our fourth question, over the last year, we have seen the tremendous impacts of COVID-19. Schools are closing, and I'm sure food banks have to find different ways to pass out food. How did your position change, and how were you able to adapt to the changes you faced? And just in case, since it's a long question, I will repeat it after our first two participants answer. Isabella, you may start.
Thanks, Chelsea. It's interesting to hear from other AmeriCorps members who are outside of the VISTA program, because a lot of people don't actually know that AmeriCorps Vistas specifically do what's called sustainable capacity building work. So essentially, we don't do direct service. We kind of address the behind the scenes, more long-term needs of a program, while other AmeriCorps members are working with boots on the ground, or other staff members of the organizations we serve are doing that. And so with COVID, we actually had to get pretty creative as a cohort in Bellingham, I feel like, and just figuring out what our service year was going to shift to look like, because for many of us, the programs that we were working in just stopped altogether because the clients couldn't be served due to COVID, and obviously there has been a virtual shift over the past few months. But for me, adapting was a huge challenge because I started experiencing a lot of guilt, especially at the beginning, because I wasn't filling hours. I wasn't really meeting any deliverable objectives. And I was holding all this guilt because I was like, oh, I signed up to serve the community, and here I am at the height of a crisis, and I can't serve the community in the ways that I had committed to. But it was really valuable to just remember how much more valuable quality of work is, rather than quantifiable objectives, even as they can be beneficial. The quality of the work that I was able to put in was more important than meeting, a certain number of hours per week. And when Vistas kind of got the message, hey, you're allowed to kind of do direct service in response to COVID now, I feel like we all kind of perked up and we were like, okay, it's our time to shine. And that helped me kind of start achieving a little bit more of my own personal objectives and just being able to continue to address community needs. And so because, like I mentioned before, I sort of got to start guiding my project a little bit more, I was able to address some of the key areas within the community that I needed to work on prior to COVID, like kind of ending the cycle of violence to eradicate poverty that youth experience. But instead, I got to pull youth in from the community and really teach them those objectives and work with them to continue teaching that to their peers and creating a sort of youth peer advocacy program for the community, which was wonderful for me.
Thank you, Isabella. That's really exciting to hear about that advocacy that you were able to give to other youth. Next, Jalen.
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, it was definitely a difficult time to no longer be in the school site, being able to serve my students, as a lot of my students are low-income, high-risk students who enjoy having a positive role model in their area who is looking out for their best interest and looking into their future along with being there for them. So that was definitely something that's just hard personally stuff, because as a virtual setting, not allowed as much contact due to our MOUs and other stuff as well. So most I could do for them as a college and career coach was make YouTube videos or send a video to a teacher to send to them and such. So trying to interact with them while not being able to really interact with them is definitely difficult to say the least, and definitely unfulfilling. So hoping that this time passes through and allowing for other changes and stuff. Luckily for this year, we've got some more changes for my position, which allows me to have some more contact and in a different role and having the time to prepare for that. So whether it be making videos of me having lessons, talking about college and careers, or a random video of me doing something in my spare time, like playing with a yo-yo and showing that to students, helps brightens up their day and helps them encourage them to go along with their studies during this time.
Thank you, Jalen. I completely understand your situation, actually. And I'm sure despite the limitations you faced to be able to connect with your students, I'm sure they appreciated all you did. Next, Matt.
Yeah, my position has definitely seen the impacts of COVID. We've had quite a few changes. We've definitely had to reconstruct our availability to students. Before, we weren't necessarily allowed to contact students away from the school site or anything like that. Obviously, with COVID and a virtual transition, that has changed slightly. So that is an interesting touch, I suppose. But away from the contractual side of things, it's allowed me to be more creative, I think. There was a lot of organization and regiment in terms of our college readiness lessons and things like that and how they were structured. But with shifts in the school bell schedule and student learning styles, we've sort of had to kind of reinvent the wheel. It was working perfectly fine before, but now we need to kind of refine it to work for this system as well. This has been a fun and exciting challenge and has allowed a creative side of me to come out that I wasn't entirely sure I even had. So it's also given me a chance to become more tech savvy and things like that. And I think I speak for all of CSF when I say that we've definitely had a chance to step up and get used to this computer work and things like that. So it's been difficult, but it's been something we've had to learn together to thrive in this virtual setting. But adapting that was really difficult at first. I was not great with emails and staying on top of my tech tools and things like that. But once I realized that AmeriCorps and especially CSF were willing to work with me and guide me through that shift, and all of the resources that I had to help guide me through that, suddenly it wasn't as scary anymore. Once you realize that there are people there to help and serve you as well, the challenges become much less challenging. And as time has gone on, obviously, I think that we've all proven that we can do this and we can adapt, but that adaptation does not come without previous challenges with it.
Thank you, Matt. And I just realized I neglected my promise to repeat the question. Over the last year, we have seen the tremendous impacts of COVID-19. How did your position change and how were you able to adapt to the changes you faced? Maddie, please.
Thanks, Chelsea. I was actually going to ask again too. So I've mentioned this already before, but my actual job changed completely. I started with the Whatcom County Health Department, and my job was to work with a bunch of different community partners in the community, like these different organizations and local farms and stuff, on creating solutions to bringing healthy food into this neighborhood. Unfortunately, when COVID happened, all of that sort of connection, the community projects, community meetings, that all stopped. and the health department didn't really have a lot for me to do. So when the main organization mentioned that we could start doing direct service, I was contacted by the Opportunity Council here in Bellingham, who basically started this whole new project for as a result of COVID happening, where we were working with the food bank in providing food boxes for people who didn't have access to transportation and who are high risk. And so I helped develop this whole system to deliver these boxes to these clients. And that's been a huge change. It was definitely quite an adjustment, but it was really exciting. And it was, I've learned like a lot of different skills from it. So that kind of also what keys in with my whole thing I mentioned earlier about adaptability was I had a whole different supervisor. I was working on phone lines instead of working with emails type stuff and talking with people kind of behind the scenes. And now I'm interacting with our clients and the food bank. So it was a huge change, but it's been a great one.
Thank you, Maddie. Fifthly, what has been the most challenging aspect of service for you before or during COVID? This question does tie into what we talked about earlier, but maybe there's something you'd like to expand on. Isabella.
Yeah, I've definitely addressed the challenges that I faced sort of post-COVID, but I will say that pre-COVID, as a VISTA member, it was very challenging to work in a nonprofit that does 99% direct service and that serves survivors at such a high capacity that sometimes we weren't always able to meet the needs of clients. And it was just a little bit frustrating to know that I was there and that I was capable of providing that direct service support, but not being able to, as per the contract that I had signed for VISTA. And so I kind of felt that, as there were gaps that I could fill, it would be even beneficial for me not only to help the clients and help the nonprofit be more successful and be able to serve more people, but also to inform the capacity building work that I was doing behind the scenes, right? Like I'm developing projects for the clients that are coming in. I'm developing programs for the clients that are coming in, like support group curriculum. And if I get to know those clients a little bit better, that might, better inform how we're able to serve them. That being said, I do understand the value of, nonprofits that have to do all this, boots on the ground, direct service work, like having someone like me come in to do that behind the scenes work. And so it was that fine line that I felt like I walked most days where I was like, yes, I could help that client, but actually I'm not supposed to. That's not the role that I've taken on, and here's why. And, just a little bit of feelings of guilt coming up, being like, I could take a call from the helpline, but actually I'm not supposed to. And so really navigating that was the biggest challenge for me. And I wish that there was kind of like a joint in-between program, right, where you are allowed to do a little bit of direct service, but maybe the capacity building work is still a priority.
Thank you, Isabella. Jalen, go ahead.
Yes, as earlier I mentioned of my challenges that I've had post-COVID. So I remember going those already, so I will go over some pre-COVID challenges I had and just off of a quote unquote regular service here. Definitely challenge that comes up is my mindset of trying to impact and change as many things as possible, reach out to every student, every staff member, every parent, every member of the community. And reality is you can't change the world. You can change one person at a time, and you got to understand that. Don't know how another way to phrase this, but you're going to lose sometimes, and you got to take your losses and learn from them and figure out another plan of attack. So it was definitely frustrating to have some students or some parents and you've reached out to them 6 or 7 ways, and it's frustrating, but you got to have that mindset of 9 or 10 will work, because not everyone's the same, not everyone learns the same. And just having that challenge for the first time ever of I have a goal, and you don't give up after the 3rd or 4th try. It's trying into 10 and 11 and putting in that extra effort, that mental fatigue, and the frustration that comes from that. So that definitely was an interesting challenge to have for the first time ever pre-COVID and such. Definitely enjoyed the challenge now that I think about it, and definitely miss having that opportunity to do that. But new challenge, new opportunities. Here we are now.
Thank you, Jalen. I will refresh the question just in case. What has been the most challenging aspect of service for you before or during COVID? Matt.
This question was pretty easy for me to answer. Without a doubt, overthinking. Overthinking things has been something I've struggled with for a long time, especially in our service. It can be tough to keep your mind on track and not let the little things get to you. I always say I should have gotten my degree in overthinking, but I also think on the good side of things, overthinking and just thinking a lot, I guess, allows you a chance to register deeply about the system you're in. I learned a lot from the education system due to my, overthinking. It gave me a lot of time to think about those specific things that were, making me anxious or worried. It gives you a chance to remain kind of vulnerable while growing yourself at the same time. While it's good to think and it's good to analyze, we know at times that can work against you. I'm a creature of habits, so slight changes in someone's attitude or demeanor towards me can be a little flustering at times. I've now learned how to formulate more positive and directed thoughts. And actually, if there is a silver lining to COVID, it's allowed me more time to really structure a system to talk myself down from anxious situations and kind of allow myself to focus more on positive, healthy time and think more deeply on what the root of my actual problem is. The majority of the time I find out that it's not the actual thing that I originally think is throwing me off. In fact, it's much different than that. So while it's been a challenge, it's been one that I've worked with for the majority of my life, but this most recent year has given me a chance to really think introspectively about how to best combat that.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that advice. And Maddie.
I would definitely say I felt a lot of frustration in my first half of service before I started my my new assignment. And I'm not sure if that has to do with kind of starting out, and I'm also a really intense overthinker. So I just graduated college. I'd never really had been in a professional setting like this before, and I came in with a lot of I held myself up really high and was like, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I kind of showed up, and my supervisor, as part of a program at the health department, a lot of my coworkers had their masters. They had been working in public health for years. And I was like, I didn't study like public health in college. So being forgiving with myself, not overthinking things, probably would have made my first couple months better. But I would have to say that after I switched positions and after I didn't really have time to overthink every move I made, because just everything was just happening with COVID, I just had to make those decisions and move on. I think definitely made it a lot better. So I would definitely also think that kind of what Matt said too is kind of rearranging your thoughts and trying to think of things in different ways and being more forgiving with yourself at the beginning. Because I think a lot of the frustration I had was me overthinking or me not giving myself enough space to be like, okay, this is the start of the program, you're still learning everything. So I would really encourage anyone who feels like they're not doing well enough or that they're behind or whatever for the first couple months, really consider if they're being harsh on themselves and that there's no place or level that you should be at. So.
Thank you, Maddie. And for our final question, what is one quote which describes your service? Isabella?
My final quote is that this is a real job. I know that a lot of the folks that are going to watch this are pretty new to service, but the one thing that I've heard across the board from any AmeriCorps member I've ever met is that we have sometimes felt invalidated by either our coworkers, our supervisors, other professionals in the community that we work with, or sometimes even ourselves, right? Our parents, our family members, that because we are full-time volunteers and because we are not being paid a salary, we are not working a real job. But let me tell you that working a full-time job and not getting paid for it is the realest job you can have. We are the most dedicated people in our fields. And so don't let anybody tell you that your job's not real. You are doing amazing.
Thank you, Isabella. Jalen.
Yes, definitely that talk about having it be a job. We're not allowed to say that technically speaking because my supervisor would be upset if I said job, so I have to say service year, but fair enough. Definitely it's a lot to put into and stuff, and taking a service year is definitely difficult in terms of financially and stuff. So how does that quote over? And I looked around, and one of the great people that I've looked up to is Muhammad Ali. It's a great quote when it comes to this. Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. So putting forth that, because truthfully it's doing something and making a change and paying for our rent here, because servicing that earth and making just a community a better place is a great way of paying for something, even though it doesn't pay the bills.
Thank you, Jalen. Matt.
Mine's an interesting take. It's kind of a quote I made up. I don't really have a, quote book or anything, but I took a trip and never left the farm. It was kind of a difficult transition for me to graduate college and decide where I wanted to go. I'm not originally from Ellensburg. I'm from the coast, which is really far ways away. Not a ton of resources there for someone with a school psychology degree. And leaving this area was a little, honestly, intimidating at the time. Going somewhere like Seattle or Spokane was not what my gut was telling me to do. And when I realized that staying in the Ellensburg and Yakima area was the right choice for me, it was still tough to come to terms with that. I felt like I wasn't reaching my fullest potential because I wasn't, leaving and expanding and doing all these things that we are, I guess in a sense promised with a college degree, that you're going to get to go and you'll have all these opportunities elsewhere. Well, I think that it was almost a little disheartening to me to realize that my best plan of attack for me was to stay where I already was. But once I got involved with AmeriCorps and CSF, it made me realize that it doesn't really matter where I go, but as long as I take my morals and my values with me, the result will be the same. You will find success in the things that you truly love, and you'll find success in the things that you truly want to do. I'm thankful every day that I chose to stay in Ellensburg and work in Yakima and, serve for CSF and do the things that I feel are beneficial to not only myself, but to other people. I truly feel that without the service that AmeriCorps does, people wouldn't have resources unless we were there to give them to them. So it's an incredibly fulfilling thing. And to know that I got to make that system mine from the standpoint of where I already had situated myself and I didn't have to uproot everything and go, was at the time, it didn't seem like it was going to be a blessing in disguise, but it definitely worked out to be that way.
Thank you, Matt. Finally, Maddie, go ahead.
One of my absolute favorite quotes is from this podcast called All of My Relations. It's from the episode that talks about food sovereignty, but I think you can use this quote for anything that in life. It's the quote is, if you want to know what your purpose is, you only have to ask yourself how you will feed the people. And that really resonated with me because just because I wasn't sure, I knew I wanted to be some sort of, like, I wanted to help and I wanted to serve, but I didn't know how I wanted to serve my community or people that I'm around. And I think that AmeriCorps really helped me figure out what my best avenue is. And I think that if that quote really describes, because you either get a better understanding of how you want to be a help to serve communities, or you understand that, like, even if you don't like this, what you ended up doing, or even if you do like, you still have a better idea of how you're going to continue to serve the communities and what feeds you and in turn feeds your community. So yeah.
Great, thank you, Maddie. I really enjoyed hearing everyone's perspective from this past year. And yeah, at this time, I would like to thank all the panelists for providing their sage advice and sharing their experiences as AmeriCorps members. We bid you good day, no matter where you are, and best wishes for this year.